with his opening statements. Minister.
Thank you, Francesca. Very pleased to be here in this audience and to share with you some of the thoughts that inform our decisions with respect to the budget of 2010-2011. Let me at the outset indicate to you that the greatest inspiration from this budget came from our interactive sessions that we had prior to the budget. This year, we are able to meet a number of groups, individually and collectively. And during those sessions, I was inspired by two things. The groups that came to us were speaking not only in terms of what they would like to see in the budget, but they were speaking more in terms of what the country needs to have in its budget. And I remember the discussions very well because budgets have been seen as something from which I will get something. What I understood from the groups is that they were now searching to use the budget to become someone. In other words, they were more interested in the environment in which we shall create so that each individual can grow and grow in an environment that will create the fullness of potential of himself or herself. It is in that context, therefore, that the budget has been predicated on four different premises. The first one is that if we want to move ahead, we must be able to clear the slate. And there are many uncertainties that were becoming burdensome for the people of this country, and indeed very burdensome for the public finances of the nation. And therefore, our first approach was to deal with these uncertainties, some of which you have heard about already in the budget, but we attempted to clean the slate on the budget issues. The second objective was to set the conditions for the resumption of growth in the economy. It is true that we have had some successes for many years in this regard, but within recent times, particularly since 2007, we have found that the economy began to stumble. And when we came into office, this stumbling continued. Our cash balances in the country, treasury, deteriorated significantly from 17 billion in 2008 to just over 5 billion when we came into office, and it has further deteriorated somewhat in the last 4 months. So we were in a very fragile financial situation. And therefore, the way to get out of this was to find the mechanism for us to resume growth in the economy. And to resume growth, we need investment. And to get investment, we need an environment that will be able to generate the enthusiasm for that investment. And therefore, a large number of our measures were meant to provide that environment so that investment can take place. For my own calculations, I expect that we will have a substantial investment in the public sector investment program directed at triggering growth in the economy. In preparation of the public sector investment program, I had indicated to those who were preparing it that we must select on the criteria of those projects that will generate construction activity so that we can trigger the growth process, given the fact that there has been a slack in the construction industry over the last 2 years, and that in any society, it is public works that do generate the trigger for growth. But beyond that, I also felt that we need to find an environment of fiscal framework that will support investment other than in the energy sector. And to that extent, a lot of emphasis has been placed in providing that framework for the manufacturing and service sectors. We also felt that we need to restore the confidence of the energy sector's growth prospects. That has been under some concern, especially in light of the fact that many who have come to bid for exploring new oil had been reducing substantially. I was informed that on the last occasion that we had bids to invite companies to explore oil finds and gas finds, there were none. our fiscal regime was not sufficiently attractive, and therefore we had to do something about that. So what we did, we ring-fenced the exploration aspect of the energy sector and established a new incentive program that will provide at least the interest and certainly the hope that there will be now many more investment prospects. I'm pleased to indicate to you that on the same day that the budget was delivered, the bids were opened in the first rounds, and there were, I was informed by the Minister of Energy, a number of bidders this time around, which was a good sign as we start this new fiscal year. The third aspect of the budget was really to build a deep foundation on what we call a culture of entrepreneurship across the land. And by that, we felt that the missing link in our development focus over the years has been not to develop an entrepreneurial capability in the society at large. We had relied far too often on a state-directed development strategy, and now we must move towards a people-directed development strategy. But to do that, we needed to ensure that the people were equipped to handle the job. And therefore, we began a search for an entrepreneurial capability in the country. By that, I meant two things. One, that the traditional entrepreneurial class, sometimes referred to as the private sector, must now become more entrepreneurial and more risk-taking. And the environment is now set for them to do so. The economic environment was set on two grounds. There is indeed excess credit capacity in the banking system. And we create an environment supportive with respect to the interest rate policy, as well as the incentive program to encourage the use of that credit facility. And we hope that the private sector now will see the opportunities of taking more risk without at all compromising their stability in their financing. But perhaps the more revolutionary aspect of the budget had to do with the creation of a new class of entrepreneurs, particularly among the young population. And to some extent, we have confidence that the people in the country will respond to that. But to do so, they need a helping hand. And one of the projects that we had identified as one of the growth poles had to do with the East Port of Spain region, which we felt has remained underdeveloped for far too long, and that there was need for new entrepreneurial spirit in that area. To that end, we have earmarked some new initiatives. One, that we will call upon the universities in Trinidad and Tobago, along with civil society and the government, and indeed the community that is affected, to design an entrepreneurial plan. Hopefully, we'll be able to move towards the creation of what has sometimes been referred to as the old Havana in big cities of the world, or in all cities of the world. There are parts of the cities that, in fact, are resuscitated to create the spirit of the cities. But we will do so by creating opportunities in arts, in culture, in music, and in sports. For all these four areas will now be placed on a foundation of becoming viable industries. And it is in that context we paid a lot of attention to providing support to what hitherto now has never been given support, things like the fashion industry, things like the design industry, things like the waste, recycling of waste industry, things like the shipbuilding industry, and hopefully more ideas will come. The idea here is to create an innovative approach to entrepreneurship. And as a start, we allocated a sum for this, at this time rather small, of $10 million, where individuals who may have ideas but may not have worked out any feasibility plans may go and receive a very soft loan from the banking sector under the guidance of the criteria to be established by the government. And this, therefore, is attempting to encourage innovative thinking in a commercial way. And in so doing, we will also establish a framework of what we call business incubators. Business incubator is a technique that has been used very effectively in both South Africa and also in India. A large part of the economic success of India within recent times have been attributed to the fact that they have developed a very vibrant small business sector. And that has been promoted, and to some extent, that has been anchored by the business incubator system. We therefore intend to make substantial use of that new facility. In addition to that, we said our development financing institutions, whether it's the business development company or the development bank that we have, and indeed the agricultural development bank, will now be geared towards supporting financially small business. To some extent, most, if not all, of these institutions have lost their social focus, and they appeared not to have been responding to the social requirements of their formation. It is therefore necessary not only to give them the focus, but to streamline them towards delivering what they're supposed to do, which is to provide opportunities for the small business people. At least the financing of agricultural entrepreneurship and the financing of entrepreneurship in all the other areas I've mentioned is perhaps the most important innovation in the budget.